Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, a life coach, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution by teaching you about mental health, emotional intelligence, and grounded ways to get your life together. What does it mean to be radical and relentless? More so, once you know the definitions, how do you get there? Being empowered is a full life shift in action. So I sat down with therapist Allison Guilbault to talk about how each of us can step into our power and become radical and relentless with small shifts and focused attention that creates massive movements towards living as our best selves. So let's not waste another moment. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. Allison, I'm excited to talk to you. We were connected through really Instagram, and I love what I'm seeing you do. We share a very similar space in empowering women through therapy, through multiple arenas. Looks like Western and Eastern medicine really combined, which is a very powerful tool. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to talk about relentless and radical, two words that scare the hell out of most women.
Yeah, I am a therapist in New Jersey. I specialize in anxiety, in trauma, and in sex and intimacy. Started my career mostly working with men. I had a big background in forensics and worked in a jail, so mostly worked with men. And then somewhere maybe about, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, I did the switch. And I really just so enjoy working with women. I particularly work with women that are what I say like overachievers, high functioning.
Mhm.
They're the women who do it all, right? Whether it's their career or their kids, both, the ones who just constantly move, say yes to everything. So, a lot of what my work now looks like is speaking to that, that type of woman specifically and just, letting her know she's enough and,
Mhm.
helping her maybe how to build boundaries or just like herself, be kinder. I do a lot of, Eastern meets Western philosophy as well, for sure.
Yeah. It's so interesting because coming to this space, we realize very quickly that those high achieving women, I say this because I identify, right? And I'm sure you probably do as well, tend to have a pretty deep trauma story. And they spend a lot of time running. The first question I generally ask someone when they come in and they're saying, I'm high achieving, I'm like, do you have a hard time sitting still? Like, oh yeah. I'm like, all right, you're in the right place,
Yeah,
right?
exactly that.
Yeah. So let's talk about all of that. And I love that you made this switch, and especially with a background in forensics, that says so much to me. You use two words that, again, most women are scared of: relentless and radical. We team that with empowerment, and I can hear people putting their hands over their ears going, oh no, oh no, what does that mean? And then will I ever get there? So, what do those words paired together mean?
Yeah, so for me, something that I've noticed, particularly with this type of woman, is that they have so much messaging that they're not enough, right? And
Right.
it's subtle, right? They may not immediately recognize that. So that messaging is often relentless, right? And so
Mhm.
I'm writing a book right now, and the title of my book, spoiler alert, it's called Yes, I Am Too Much. And the reason
Mm.
that I named it that way is I think there's so many women who, if they start to have a voice, if they start to talk about their needs, suddenly they're called dramatic or bitchy or too much, right? So when I use sort of radical and relentless, it's almost like we have to show up just so unapologetically. We have to show
Mhm.
up and just be so like just unconditionally loving, right? Like
Right.
just go for it in like the most extreme way because we're combating so many messages that are telling us to be smaller, to be quiet, or to do more. So, I don't think it's enough to just have sort of like mundane self-love, right?
Yeah.
Mundane empowerment. It's like we kind of got to go for the extreme. And I think that that's very, very difficult for a lot of women because they do shy away and don't want to be seen as someone who's too much.
Hmm. There's another word I want to add in there beyond the bitchy and all of that, and it's intimidating.
Yes.
That word comes up so often. I know that I've heard it from on the other side of the table to even myself, "Oh, you're so intimidating." What does that mean exactly? And we take that as such as a negative, where
Mhm.
I say, "Oh, they see something in you that they want, that they
Yes.
don't quite yet own."
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Mhm. So, let's talk about how we get there.
Mhm.
That's like the $1,000,000 question, right?
It is.
Where would you start, and what are you looking for in your practice and in your kind of formula? Because we all have our own formula in which we
Yeah.
work.
I mean, there's like what I'm about to say may come off as cliche, but I think it has to be the starting point. We talk about affirmations and we talk about mantras and we talk about all those
Mhm.
things. And for me, I take it from really a brain science point of view. Like I'm a brain science nerd. And
We are besties.
what I have absolutely learned is that the
Mhm.
more we think something, the more automatic that thought becomes. That's just
Right,
a true, actual scientific fact, right?
right.
So a lot of the times when we're having that messaging, it's actually really subconscious. I don't think that right? That question that you ask, hey, you're this
Mhm.
overachiever, right? Do you have
Yeah.
trouble sitting down? I don't think there's an obvious thought there that's like, wow, I'm running from something, or I don't know how to
Right.
speak my emotions. But there's something deep that's powering, like I need to prove my worth, or
Mhm. Mhm.
something in there. So I always start with clients and I say, like, all right, one, self-awareness is so awesome. Let's just try to figure out, where did this messaging come from? What are you thinking? But then beyond
Mhm.
that, I want you to actively practice switching these thoughts, right? Thoughts can be learned, but they can also be unlearned. So,
Sure.
you might have to fake it till you make it. You might not even believe it just yet. But I want you to, as part of your actual like self-care diet, right? Confidence diet, start to show up and say nice things about yourself. So I really start there with just, the basics of affirmations, which, for me is neural pathways, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's one of those things that we have to unlearn, like you said, unbecome the stories. I ask, whose voice is this? And that takes people inside and helps them kind of dissect,
Yeah.
who did this come from? Was it my cousin, my mom, my best friend, these people, these major players in our lives that we pick things up. And it's really interesting, and I'm sure you can probably speak to this too. I will often see these very small moments become these very big stories in people's lives. And they
Mhm.
think, oh my gosh, I've spent 20 years holding on to something that actually had zero value.
Yes.
It makes them mad. It
Mhm.
makes them fearful, regretful, all of the host of the negative emotions.
Yes. Yes, really exactly that. I was like looking at a tarot type deck, right? And they had this cute little exercise that I'm now incorporating into my practice. But it said, where you're starting to feel stress, whether it's about yourself or about someone else, right?
Mhm.
Like I am angry that I invited people over to my house and it was dirty. I'm embarrassed by that. And then like
Mhm.
legit just cross it out and just write, I forgive myself, right?
Mhm.
And that practicing, because again, it's almost inaccessible. We're not taught that. We're not taught
Right.
that we get to forgive ourselves, and that a lot of the messaging that we have did come from someone else, right? We're not taught very quickly to challenge those voices. And I always use the
Mhm.
story, not to throw my mother under the bus. She's a great woman, but she, as all parents do, wonderful mothers bring their own baggage to parenting, right? And
Absolutely.
something in my household was like deep shame around
Mhm.
presentation, right? Like if we were going to church, we better be in our finest, right? If
Right,
we were having company over, the bathroom better be spick and span. And in
right,
adulthood, that actually stresses me out. It does not help me, right? Like, okay,
right.
I'm not, a slob, but actually it's quite all right if my friends come over and I don't have fresh flowers on the table, right? If I don't have it
Right.
vacuumed immediately before their arrival.
Mhm.
So in that kind of scenario, right, one, I'm challenging the thought. Two, I'm assigning who it is, my mom. I'm starting to say, I don't have to believe this. And then I'm going to forgive myself and her, right? Like,
Mhm, mhm.
hey, everyone was doing the best that they can. This doesn't have to be perceived as a failure, but
Right.
I don't have to adopt into my life and incorporate something that really isn't working for me anymore.
Yeah. Let's soften the mom dad story for just a moment. I think it's so important. It's something we actually haven't talked about here on the podcast. And I think it's so tied to the word relentless when we're talking about releasing those stories for that full empowerment. For me, one of the biggest things that I've learned in my own parenting, I'm a mom of an adult child and one that's almost a senior and then one that's 11. So we have a big gap. But for me, what I learned was I was growing up when they were growing up. I was learning just as much as they were learning. And a lot of times when they'll come back and my daughters say that my son has a different mom than they had, and that's very true, right?
Sure.
The trauma story versus the healed story, those are two different people. And when we come back and we're talking about a moment, I will often say, how did we do?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Not how did I do, but how did we do in that moment? What did you teach me and what did I teach you?
yeah.
And do we need to clean up the story?
Yeah.
I think
That's so
that's
good.
such a strong empowerment there to be able just to say, yeah, maybe we screwed this up,
Yep.
but we can be relentless in the screw up after effect too.
Absolutely. I really strongly believe it isn't like we don't measure our success of life on whether we screwed up or not. It's just like
Yeah,
what we do in the aftermath of the screw up, right?
yeah.
Did we ask for help? Did we offer forgiveness? Did we give ourselves self forgiveness? What did we learn? How are we doing better? Right? It's like
Mhm.
at the end of I joke with clients like there's only good decisions and life lessons, right? Like
Yeah.
bad decisions even teach us something. And for sure, giving, parents, particularly moms, a big old pass here. Right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, we're all human trying to do the best we can.
Right.
And no one has it figured out. Right. Like absolutely no.
Mm. Now, we're not excusing for anybody who's throwing, anything at the screen or your car radio or whatever it is, your phone, your device. We're not giving a pass to deep trauma or
Yeah.
abuse or anything like that. We are not. We're talking about the
Run of the
small
mill.
things that became the stories that later on that we're over cleaning the house or we're standing in the mirror and we're talking bad about ourselves.
Yeah,
Those are the things that we're talking about.
exactly that. Absolutely.
How do we become radical in this?
I mean, first you kind of got to commit to it, right? Like it's a
Yeah,
big commitment. And this is where like my Eastern kind of stuff comes in. I'm
right.
very big on setting intentions, right? I do
Mhm,
think the fact when we speak something to the world, we're going to be more likely to put energy to it. So, I want to become relentless. I note it, I practice it, and I like deep commit. And that can look,
mhm,
there's so many ways we can practice relentless self-love, right? We can make time for ourselves and do things that are really fulfilling and nurturing. We can surround ourselves with beautiful support. We can make sure that
mhm.
we're talking kindly to ourselves, which is such an issue for most women, right? I tell a story a lot that one day I was working in when I was back in the day when I was in person, I had every woman who came through the door, every client that I saw, I complimented them. And
Mhm.
100% without fail, every single woman diminished the compliment, right? So
Absolutely.
when something like this, oh my God, Sally, I love your hair, right? So when we're talking about relentless self-love, radical empowerment, right? Those are the little tiny switches that cumulatively make our lives entirely different, right?
Yeah.
Starting to let in, not just criticism, but letting in compliments,
Mhm,
right? Starting to compliment yourself. Right. I always joke with like my friends. I'm like, let's brag. Like, tell me something awesome you're doing. Right. And
mhm,
that's hard for a lot of women because they feel like they're coming off as showy, right? Oh, I'm going to come off as
mhm.
egotistical. It's like, no, tell
Yeah.
me you will be quick at a brunch to tell me all the things that are going wrong or where you screwed up. I want to hear all the stuff that you're nailing too. Let's lift each other up.
Yeah.
Right. So it really is like the messaging that we're telling ourselves matched with effort, right? Like,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. I have a girlfriend that sends a text on Sunday morning and she says, "What are we celebrating this week?"
Oh, so good.
And I love it, and I'm like, "Damn, I wish I would have been the one who sent those texts," right? But she always does, and I love that she does it, and you can see the women who are still working on
Yeah.
this radical acceptance, kind of slowly,
Yeah.
dip their toe in like, "Oh, I ate well this week. That's great. We're gonna celebrate the hell out of it," right? But then the other like, "I kicked ass this week," right? "I did this, this, and this," and that's what it takes, right? What are we celebrating?
Yes.
It's a hard switch though for a lot of people. What's the biggest struggle that you see in it? Is just the belief in it or just the practice?
Probably both. I always start with like, you
Mhm.
have to give yourself permission,
Yeah,
right? So, again, it sounds a little cliche. It's tough to talk about these subjects and not sound a little
right.
bit cheesy, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I have that limiting thought, for instance, that's like, if I show off, I'm showy, right? No
Mhm.
one will like me. I'll come off as egotistical. You've created an impasse for yourself. There's no door, right? So
Mm.
it's just starting to kind of go back to like practicing. And I always say,
Mhm.
like I'm kinder to my stepdaughter than I was to myself, right? Like I would never
Right.
look at my stepdaughter and tell her she's not good enough or she
Right.
can't do something, right?
Right.
I also am really nice to my dog, right? So I sometimes
Right.
will switch my voice and just be like, okay, if my stepdaughter was up against a challenge right now, what would she be telling herself? Right. What would I be encouraging her to
Mhm.
say to herself? And then
Right.
say it back, look in the mirror, like, you got this, you can do this. It's okay to like yourself. Right.
Mhm.
It's okay to compliment yourself. It's okay to boost yourself. It's okay to share accomplishments with your friends, your family, the people that care about you.
I think what you just said is so powerful. And there's one key point that I want to extract and make sure that it did not get lost in all of the greatness in what you just said. The fact that you, one, stepped outside and you became the third party to the moment. Such a huge ability to see things differently when we do that.
Mhm.
But the part that you said, when you put the impasse in place, forget it.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere. The story is set in stone, at least until you recognize it, give yourself permission, and then flip it. Many people do not realize that.
Yes.
I want to X, Y, and Z,
Mhm.
but forget it. You're done.
Yeah. Yep.
Forget
That's
it.
right.
Yeah. Such a major, major thing. The minute the but comes in, the minute the I don't know, I'm not sure, you might as well just put it in a box and wait a little bit because it's on the shelf at that point.
Absolutely. So true. So true.
That's a hard thing for a lot of people to grasp, though. I mean, that just feels like, well, what do you mean? You're telling me it's impossible? No, I'm telling you, you just set yourself up for not being able to do what you want to do.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a sneak attack a little bit, right? So
Yes.
often people don't think like, oh, I'm telling myself I can't do this. It's not that
Mhm.
over. Right? It's like more subtle than that. It'll look like I'm too old, it's too
Mm,
late, right? No, I'll be embarrassed if I fail, right? Like little
mhm.
subtler language. And so,
Right.
but when we can notice them, like I give clients like buzzwords, like if you're saying these things, we're stuck, we're at the impasse, right?
Yeah.
It's never too late. You're never
Mhm.
too old. Time passes no matter what, right? We can
Yeah.
accomplish great things. And my practical advice is I always say like my big three, right? Practice creativity,
Mm,
flexibility, and patience, right? And if you
mm,
bring these three energies to a situation, like you're unstoppable, right? And
mhm.
so, example I will give is, a dream of mine is to move to Bali. Okay, truth be
Mm,
told, in this lifetime, that's probably not going to happen, right? Like I
right.
have a family, I have a career. With that said,
Mhm.
if I get flexible, creative, and patient, I can think, okay, well, what about Bali do I love? Right? It's like I love being near the ocean. Cool.
Mm,
I live in New Jersey. I can go to the ocean.
right.
Right. So it's softening the message and
Mhm.
really opening up creative energy to be like, how can I accomplish what I want? It might not look exactly the way I fantasize it about, but I can get my needs met.
Mm. Go deeper with those 3 because
Mm.
I think that that is something that obviously allows us to be relentless and radical and find empowerment, but those 3 are so fundamental in ways that people do not understand. So can you go deeper, please?
Yeah. So, I'll probably start with like, I don't know, I guess maybe the easier one. Like, I think we all know what patience is. And, patience is just the idea of being willing to accept that things take time, right?
Mhm,
Now, as an example, I'm writing a book. I shared that with you. I've been
mhm.
writing this book for over a year. It is no way is going to be out before probably 2026, but
Mhm.
that is my patience. There is a goal. I am still writing a
Right.
book. The success or the failure isn't marked on where the book is. It's the journey of writing the book, right?
Yes.
So that to me is like that patience piece, just being kind to yourself that things take time, period.
Right.
Flexibility is a little harder, right? I think especially for people that have anxiety, right? Flexibility is a bit tough. It's just the idea that again, we can't come up with our dreams in these very concrete ways because that's setting ourselves up for some disappointment. It's adaptability, the ability to change, right? An example I give is I was a COVID bride, right? I had this beautiful wedding planned, and guess what? COVID happened. The world had different plans. My wedding did not manifest the way I thought it was going to, but staying flexible in that, right? I can still have a wedding. It just looks different than what I thought it was going to look like, right? That keeps us sane. It keeps us empowered. It keeps us confident, right? If I had marked it as it was supposed to look like this and it didn't, I would feel emotionally pretty bad about that, right?
Right.
So that's that flexibility. And that final creativity piece, it's just, how can I envision the need in multiple ways, right? So again, like I want to move to Bali, can't really make that happen. What I can do is go to the shore. What I can do is maybe make sure that I'm having time where I'm not working all the time, right? That like more freedom lifestyle. I can visit there, right? So it's whatever you need. Just thinking about there's got to be multiple ways to get that need met, right? Not one way, and just allowing open-mindedness and expansion to kind of pull in some ideas, right?
Absolutely. Open-mindedness. Ooh, do we get stuck in our ways, right? We get stuck in, yeah, in the stories. And just like you said, being able to be patient, find another way around it, loosen your grip on the end result. So
But
the expectation, and knowing that you can make anything happen. You just have to be willing to be open to it not looking exactly like you painted it. It's funny because we get so tied, right? It's going to look like A, B, and C. And at the end, I'm going to make the $1,000,000 and I'm going to do this and this and this. I'm like, okay, but what if that doesn't happen? We're not supposed to say what if. Okay, right. However,
yeah.
what if it doesn't happen that way? Are you going to be satisfied with the creation? And if you're not, then why are we doing it in the first place?
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you see being, I know the stories are the biggest thing that tie us up. Permission is next. Where do we step into the next line of things? Obviously, with our 3 there, would the next fundamental piece be action for you, or is there something in between?
Yeah, I have like a cheesy line that nobody knows. No one's success story started around by sitting around and waiting, right?
Yeah.
And, I'm a huge proponent of manifestation,
Mhm.
but I think there is sort of like a misunderstanding that
Yeah.
just putting energy is enough, right?
Yeah.
So it's not, it's like the energy that you're putting into something matters greatly, right? The intentions, the narrative that you're giving yourself, but it has
Mhm.
to be met with actual action, right? If
Right.
I want to open a business, right, there's a lot of steps to do that. I don't care if I'm opening a multi-million-dollar company or if I'm opening an Etsy shop. There are actionable steps. So yeah, you got to take calculated risks, and it gets scary. And
Mhm.
yes,
Mhm.
but there's certainly an effort part, right? It's very effortful.
Right. Now, when we're talking about especially high functioning women, when we're talking about these ladies that are, maybe still dealing with the trauma story and we're trying to kick ass and also kind of tame the lion on the side,
Yeah.
right? Anxiety is a natural experience that we all feel. How do you then begin to tame that? Because for me, what I often see is getting that piece out of the way opens the door to so much. And for me, the first thing that I'm looking at is, do you feel safe?
Again, back to my brain nerd stuff, right?
Yeah.
So anxiety is a fear response, right? And it's
Mhm.
unfortunately a fear response to something that is just a perceived threat, right?
Right.
But our body doesn't really know the difference. So,
Absolutely.
if there's a saber-toothed tiger running at us, or I'm thinking I'm going to fail at the meeting today, believe it or not, we mimic a lot of that same
Yeah.
response systems, right? So, my answer to like, how am I learning to tame the beast, right? Is, and, I'm biased as hell, but it's start with a professional that can help you
Yeah.
understand. You can do it on your own, right? With, I guess, enough
Mhm.
resources out there, it is exponentially harder, right? It's going to be a
Right.
slower process and a harder process.
Yeah.
So if you are connected with someone who can really, especially when we're talking about trauma, no one deserves to
Mhm.
have to heal from trauma on their own. That is a
Right.
very difficult feat. So if you are meeting with someone, especially someone like a therapist who's objective, who has some skill sets, who has trained to ask you the right questions,
Yeah.
right? That can help build safety, because I do think absolutely exactly what you said.
Mhm.
Safety is fundamental for becoming
Mhm.
unstoppable, for gaining that
Yeah.
relentless self-love. Right? We don't do anything well if we don't feel safe. So, finding a way to establish that, and we'll always recommend, professional help there.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I hear a lot of people, "Well, I limped along. I tried this, I tried that, nothing worked and didn't stick. I tried to meditate and that felt like crap because I didn't know what I was doing. And then I tried to, write things in a journal and that just felt like I was re-traumatizing myself." Yes, the answer is yes,
Yeah.
over and over again. If you don't have the ability to make the path forward, it's very difficult to get out of the path.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trained in this, right? I have 4
Right.
degrees in mental health, and
Yeah.
yet for me getting out of my own way, I still needed someone to help pave the way for
Yeah.
me. Like
Yeah.
insight's really difficult, right? Looking at our own patterns is really
Mhm.
difficult. I needed someone to tell me it was okay. I needed someone to hold my hand. I needed
Yeah.
someone to ask me gentle questions. I don't know that I would have gotten the reflection points, and certainly not the healing, if I hadn't reached out for help.
Yeah, same, right? I mean, many people who have listened to the podcast know that I did not want to be going to therapy. I didn't wanna be seen walking into a therapist's office. I felt like that was weak. I felt like I had, handled it on my own. I actually started doing research, which sent me back to school, and through the process of, you know, getting licensed and all of that stuff, I did so much work. But it was a support system, right? And it's so hard, and let's talk about this too because there is a bump that happens a lot of times in this path to radical self-ownership and to self-love and to all of these things, especially trauma healing, where it becomes very difficult. And
Mhm.
people say, nope, not touching that. I'm throwing my hands up. This is too hard. I hear these words all the time. I'm sure you do too. I feel like I'm going backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
I'm like, or you're touching things from backward.
Yeah.
And that normally stops people and go, "Oh, okay, okay." I'm like, "You're not going backward.
Yeah.
You're just touching things from the past. You're
Yes.
bringing them forward into your awareness. We have to move through them in order to get to this other side."
Yeah.
You hear that, I'm sure.
I do, and I agree with you. Learning to sit in discomfort, touching things that have hurt us, it's challenging, right? And
Mhm.
you know, I don't think that there's any learning that happens that without discomfort, right? So someone who's
Right,
like changing their body structure and going to the gym, right? There is going to be some
right,
massive learning curves, and there's going to be
right,
pain points, right? And at the
right.
end, you're like, but it was worth it. And I think emotional healing has a lot of that as well. Like it is not the sort of the trope that we have for healing is it's just empowering, right? And
Right.
the truth is it's hurtful. Like we have to sit
Mhm.
in some of that pain to get through it. Now I
Mhm.
do believe like the cathartic release that happens at the end is well worth it,
Yeah.
right? And I often think like pick your hard. Sitting in trauma is also really painful, right? It's painful in a
Mhm.
different way, maybe, but the healing and the moving through it, bringing it to awareness, processing it, it will be temporarily painful or difficult, but it will feel so much lighter at the end, right?
Mhm. Mhm. It makes me think, and I wanna offer this to you listening so that maybe you can start to realize that there's maybe some work that still needs to be done, or it's a tool that you can actually use in your own experience right now. Allison, you just said pick your hard. Sitting in trauma is very difficult, just like I'm trying to move through it. I will often have people sit and say, okay, how is the trauma affecting me now? I know that it's impacting me because I've got to this point that I have some awareness of it. So, how is it showing up?
Mhm.
And I ask you to list it. So, put it on your paper.
Yeah,
and begin to see how many times during the day you're actually experiencing, feeling, and witnessing these things. I promise you, you will begin to kind of feel sick to your stomach because you don't want to sit in it. But guess what? You already are.
exactly that.
Yeah. Any practices that you would advise?
I think that, what you just mentioned is really helpful. Again, you got to be very, very aware of like how it is affecting you, but starting
Sure.
to inventory some of your thoughts, right? Really like
Mhm.
that self-awareness is really important. And I always
Right.
say, I actually just bought there was like a journal company that sent me some journals, and they were one of the exercises in it was every day for a week. Just write the emotions that are coming up and scale them
Mhm.
from 1 to 10, right?
Right.
Again, I have a lot of language towards this, and that was actually difficult for me, right?
Right.
Oh, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm actually just frustrated, right?
Right.
Like at a 6. So I
Yeah.
think when we're talking about practical stuff, like getting to know your own brand of how
Mhm.
are you feeling? What
Right.
are you feeling? And why are you feeling it is like just a really beautiful first step. And that can take some patience and some time as well. The other thing that I would offer is I'm also, as much as a brain nerd for brain science, I am also a nerd for somatic psychology, right?
Yes.
And what that simply means is just like really honoring that mind body connection.
Right.
Our bodies give us so much information, right? If you're thinking a thought throughout the day and you drop into your body and it's your shoulders are up,
Mhm.
there's tightness in your chest, that's a good check engine light sign that like, hey, the thing I'm doing right now isn't working for me, right? And
Mhm.
really, I think learning how to shift our body sensations from stress to release. I don't think we talk about that nearly enough. I don't think enough people have any awareness on like,
Mm.
honest to God, if you learn how to take those deep breaths, there can be release. And then it gives your brain release too, right? Like there's top
Yeah.
down. So, yeah, so that would be a really practical tool as well as like learning some of that somatic techniques, understanding mindfulness a bit better, learning how to control your breath, right? Learning all of those things are super
Mhm.
important, I find.
Yeah, absolutely. Keying into having some of that awareness too is just to kind of begin to notice the things that you do when you are uncomfortable.
Mhm.
When you get to a place that maybe you're snapping your hands or you are bouncing your foot or you're holding your breath, right? Like, what is it that is the body indication that something is not working for you? Like you said, pinching your shoulders up.
Mhm.
Most people walk around like that all day long. And I just want to walk behind them and go, hold on, take a deep breath, push them down, right? You're okay. Take a deep breath. Do you need a hug? you know, it's a hard place to be. I love that check-in point. Anything else that allows us to get to that radical empowerment before we talk about what it feels like to be there?
Mm. Yeah, it's really just I just can't say this enough. It's just liking yourself, right?
Mhm,
So, becoming not only all of that awareness that we're talking about, but just that active change, right? I
right.
encourage someone to say something that they like about themselves every single day, right?
Mhm.
And I think that you'll start. I just had a client the other day that was like, your voodoo has like totally worked. I can't believe it, right? Like, I didn't try this. I thought it was garbage. It's all this cliche
Mhm.
Instagram stuff. And now it's 6 months later, and I'm having better conversations with my husband. And
Right,
I'm showing up to work and asserting my needs. And I'm walking with my head physically higher, right? Like I'm
right.
walking into the room owning space, right? Instead of cowering. I'm not apologizing for myself. When I go to the restaurant and I want to ask for extra salad dressing, I now don't start with, I'm so sorry, I don't mean to bother you, but right?
Right.
And all of these little shifts cumulatively just totally rock our world.
Mhm, mhm. Agreed. I asked one of my daughters one time, "What's the best piece of advice I ever gave you?" And I will never forget her words, and she said, "Don't look at your damn shoes."
I love it.
And I
Brilliant.
was like, "Wow, okay," right? Like, that is the
Yes.
whole essence of feeling that empowerment, of owning the room yourself, of feeling like you have a spot and a place where you belong. thought, well, I don't know when I said that, but I'm glad I did.
Nice. Really good. I'm gonna
Right.
steal it.
Yeah. All right. So we know that we can get there, right? It takes work. We want to put some practices in place to get there. But what does it feel like to be relentless and radical?
It feels unstoppable. And,
Yeah.
I like my own story. I came from like a place where I was really anxious and I was working in a job I didn't like, and I had that like stereotypical story.
Mm-hmm.
And I really was settling for less because I didn't think I deserved more. And I, had a partner and I had a job and I had a six-figure salary. But at the end of the day, I was not fulfilled, right? Like I wasn't happy straight up. And when I really got in touch with that, it really was being powered by that I didn't think I was enough. And I actively started to switch it. Like my resume for where I am now is just leaps and bounds from where it is. I have my own podcast, I'm writing a book, I have a full practice, I have a full coaching, I publicly
Right.
speak, right? How I feel in my heart and my soul is so different. And
Right.
that bleeds out to everywhere, right? Like my relationship is really strong. I travel the world. My friendships are amazing. And it just feels good. Now, that is not to say I don't have challenges in my life. Of course I do.
Right.
But it's just, it's not, my life is not powered by pressure anymore. Feels good. It feels inspirational. It feels connected.
The words, it's not powered by pressure. I think that is so strong just to really sit in those words, right? What does it feel like to be empowered? It sans pressure. There will be moments that feel like everything is sitting on the shoulders and deep in the, in your chest. That's life, right?
Yeah.
That's life lifing you. But it's a matter of being able to realize that I'm not putting external pressure or internal pressure on myself to perform these things and live this life that does not have alignment for me. So huge. That is the essence of empowerment. When you get there, it may sneak attack you and you go, wait. I'm not thinking those things. I'm not feeling those things. I am having the best relationships and all of those things. Or it doesn't hit you, in a slow movement. It hits you like a ton of bricks and you have a deep sense of relief. However the path comes, it's so beautiful. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to stand and witness and watch people do it too.
It really is. It really, I just can't help but believe that like when we all individually do better and are living our more aligned life, the world
Mhm.
as a unit is just a better place. Like you know, we can lift each other up, right?
Mhm. Mhm. I agree. What did we miss? What's the one thing maybe that women need to hear to be able to light that internal fire, that flame, and hold themselves in a different space than perhaps they are right now?
What did we miss? I think we missed the memo that true self-care means taking care of yourself first, right?
Mhm.
And I truly believe that when we take care of ourselves first, we become better parents, we become better partners,
Mhm.
we become better members of society. And I think for a very long time that's been flipped, right? Like women
Mhm.
are so conditioned that like the good wife, make sure that her husband's needs are met,
Mhm.
certainly in parenting, right? Like, no, you put your kids first before everything. And I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit of a mind screw, but the truth is, like, when we put the mask on first, we better serve
Mhm.
other people. So the gift you're giving your children is actually taking care of yourself. And I think that's the
Mhm.
part we missed that I just really want to flip that switch. And I do think it will make it a phenomenal difference. You are allowed to love
Mhm.
yourself. You're allowed to have things that are special for you. You're allowed to be fulfilled. Your kids will model that. They'll emanate that, emulate that into the world. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And to realize that every day can be your special occasion, right? And that is putting yourself first and forward. It's that, today I am going to take 5 minutes to myself. It's okay if the house is a mess. It's okay if I have a million things to do or the kids need this or they need that. It's going to get done, ladies. It's going to
yeah,
be okay. I
yeah,
promise.
yeah.
It's the special occasion, so wear the thing, light the candle, do the whatever it is. I'm not talking about the bougie self-care, but I'm just talking about the 5 minutes, right? Take the
Yeah.
10, 5, whatever it is, and give yourself permission, like we talked about. Show up. Well, my gosh, I feel like we could talk about so many different things, right? So tell me how people can find you and engage with you because I know that they are going to want to know more about being relentless and radical too.
Yeah, good place to go is my website, and it's a note from your therapist.com. I have a pretty good social media following, and that is by the same name, a note from your therapist. I offer, therapy and coaching, but then, those are all my signature services. But beyond that, I do try to provide a lot of free resources, for people that
Mhm.
may not have access. Obviously, mental health care is, there's no substitute online, but I do
Right.
try to at least offer the fundamentals of this kind of topic, how to change your mindset, through my newsletter, through my free stuff. I'm doing a free workshop at the end of the month. So, there's
Perfect.
ways to access me for free, which I think is important.
Agreed. A lot of people do not have access to quality mental health care, and Allison and I and so many others who are trained want to give you this. That's not just a TikTok thought or an Instagram thought. I'm sure you're like me. You scroll and you're like, nope, nope, not right. Nope, please stop posting that. Nope, nope. It's hard, but find what aligns with you and works with you. Allison, thank you so much for your time. If you would kindly share 3 things that you are grateful for.
Oh, immediately I'm going to say my dog, but also my
I love
husband.
it.
And I am very grateful for communities like this where we are,
Mhm,
trying to make the world a better place and get people to really
mhm.
like themselves. I'm grateful for you and for other accounts and other podcasts like this as well.
Thank you so much, Allison, for your time, for your wisdom, and for teaching us how to be relentless and radically empowered.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to do that.
Well, now that you know what it means to be radical and relentless, let me ask you, are you? Are you living with these 2 operations as the framework to your life? If not, will you give yourself permission to be safe enough to seek help? There are many therapists like Allison and myself who are ready and willing to help you stand in your power, find that space within yourself, and give yourself permission to heal, to get out of your own way, and to live both radical and relentless. You can find more from Allison on Instagram at a note from your therapist, or you can listen to her podcast, Becoming Unstoppable, which launches on February 21st. And you can listen anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips to bettering your life and are seeking daily inspiration and tools and tips, please follow me on social media at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Clapper, Pinterest, and now Threads. You can also visit my show notes, my blog, or my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. Please feel free to share this episode with a family member or friend as it helps spread these messages to those who may need it. Again, thank you for being a valuable part of this community. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.